Ember.
Welcome to Court Captains, a volleyball podcast where we talk all things Pro Volleyball Federation. This episode, we're talking with August Raskie, our first player interview. Welcome in. August, of course, is a setter who has 5 years of pro experience, and she comes from Colorado Springs, Colorado. She played 4 years at the University of Oregon with the Ducks, graduated in 2019, and then headed overseas, 4 years of pro ball in Italy and France before joining the PVF last year in its inaugural season, playing for the San Diego Mojo. This year, the second year of the PVF, August will be with the Grand Rapids Rise. Hope you enjoy.
So we're very grateful that you were interested in chatting with us.
Yeah.
Wanted to talk to you about six man recently. Just I know I wasn't on the list, but how was it? I've known about it for so long, and I saw that you were part of it, and it looked so much fun.
Yeah, so this was my fourth year playing in the Sixer, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's a big surf festival that happens at Manhattan Beach, and it's turned into this big 6-on-6 beach volleyball tournament, which is really cool because so many more people are involved in it now that we have sponsors, we have people on the Strand open up their house to these teams, and it's really cool. It's a good atmosphere. It's a good party atmosphere. Day one is definitely enjoy, indulge, and then day two is all right, we better see you in the finals. So it's just a good time to see everybody who plays indoor try and play sand if they don't play sand. So
I think I would enjoy sand if it was 6 people on the court.
it's super interesting because there's definitely beach and indoor are two completely different games.
Yeah.
So beach, you've got the partnership, it's super simple, but then all of a sudden you bring these indoor rules onto the sand, but you can't move as quick. So for example, in beach volleyball, you're not allowed to open hand tip, but in 6-man beach volleyball, that's how we're scoring points, because you got 6 people taking up the entire court, somebody's going to dig you. So you better place the ball pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fun.
Well, great. I wanted to talk to you about the PVF. That's what we're a podcast of the PVF. How was this season? How was the first season?
It was incredible, first off, because being able to come back into the States has always been a dream, and to be able to play volleyball here doing that is awesome. And I think one of my friends and I were recently talking about this too, growing up, basketball players have heroes that they can turn on the TV and watch right away. And so to finally be able to have that and be those heroes for those kids, it was very, very special for me to be in that position that I wished I had when I was younger. So that was super phenomenal. It was a dream to be able to play in San Diego. I was so thankful that the PVF put a team in California, and I think that franchise is just going to keep growing and developing. And of course, I had a great easy welcome because so many of us were Ducks there, so the atmosphere was very comfortable, and we were oh, okay, we know how to do this. Let's just keep it going. So I was very, very impressed. There were definitely some learning things about it, as there should be in a startup, whatever. But I think looking forward into this second season, it's just going to be even better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You have played before abroad for 4 seasons, right? 2 in Italy, 2 in France, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what that experience was like. What did you enjoy the most about that, and what was a big obstacle, if any?
Yeah, so many. Don't even get me started. No, honestly, I knew when I was graduating college that I wanted to go play, because that was, again, the only option. And I was I really like volleyball, and if I could make this my profession, to be humble, I was a professional athlete sounds pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, I wish I would have done more with volleyball, or with art, but I'm glad that I chose the path that I did. So my first year, I got a great contract, and I went to Italy A1, playing at Bardacini Perugia, and that town is about 2 hours north of Rome and 2 hours east of Florence. So it kind of triangles it. And it was hard. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I don't say this lightly or with any judgmental, but people who go overseas have something internally that is just different. Like there's a fire, there's a tenacity of whether it's like I want to prove myself or whether they just want to, see how hard it can get and grow. Like I think there's just like this super big surrender to going overseas that like it's not going to be like D1 college. It's not going to be like Oregon where you constantly have gear thrown at you or even a locker room that is always yours. Like we were sharing our gym in Perugia with the men's team who definitely they were the number one team in Italy. So like of course they're going to have the priority and like men's sports in general generates more money over there. So that's also a huge factor too that you fall into. So but yeah, Italy was a learning experience. I didn't really play a whole lot my first year, which kind of broke my heart, but it gave me a chance to figure out mental things outside of the court, especially living in a foreign country, having to open up a bank account, having to do insurance, having to do all of this stuff in a language that I don't speak
Oh my
was
gosh.
so demanding. And I think that's probably one of the biggest obstacles that I ran into because I'm such an expressive person. To have my entire like communication network shut off, I was like,
Oh my gosh.
wait a minute. Yeah, it definitely shattered my world. But, luckily I have just that like tenacity to be like, well, I guess I'm learning Italian then. So like I was listening to music, I was trying to pick up conversations, like I was making a fool of myself. But luckily I was in a space that people wanted me to be able to communicate in Italian. So like they were very helpful and very informative to like, oh, hey, say it like this, or like, watch this TV show. It'll help you pick up like that quick quick grammar. Because like not only like you can go from a book and read everything, but when you're in the culture, you're like, that's slang. I don't know what that is, but okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Were
go with that.
there other Americans on your team?
No.
Oh.
So that was also another factor is there were a couple other foreign players, but this was like their third, fourth season abroad. And here I am like fresh from the States and I'm not playing and I'm so confused as to why. So it
And
was
what are they coaching in language wise? Like
Italian.
what? Italian. So there are other non-Italians who need to get on board, right? And figure out
Yeah.
what is being said. But like, that's something that I thought about. It's like, I don't know. I certainly don't know volleyball words in Italian, in another language. Like if you're learning it, that's not in a book. Like you need to start hearing what the words and the phrases that we use to communicate are in that language. That's crazy.
And so like my entire film sessions, it would be like 2 hours in film of just talking in Italian. And so I was like, all
Oh
right,
my
guess we're
gosh.
learning Italian. But two of the foreigners that were on our team were Portuguese or Brazilian, so they spoke Portuguese. So like they had like an easy in. But then I had a girl from Croatia who's like this was her third season in Italy, and I was like, all right, I am a one-man island right now. We're
Oh,
doing this. But no,
Holy
I'm
cow.
so grateful for that experience because
yeah.
while I make it sound like so brutal and like hard, like those are the moments that you're going to grow as a person. And every year overseas brought me something that I am so grateful for in like who I am now that I almost miss being overseas just to being like, all right, what am I capable of now? Like I feel like in the States sometimes it can be just a little bit too easy access and I get comfortable. So
Mhm.
actually I was talking about this with some of my friends recently. Like I miss being overseas for those reasons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you find that like the experience playing in the PVF, what obviously the language barrier, you didn't have to deal with that, but like the actual league, how does it compare to your abroad experience?
Yeah, I think as far as organization goes, I would say PVF is up there. All
Nice.
these leagues internationally have been running for a while, so there's just a system that you just know. Like I've stayed at the same hotels every 2 years when I was in Italy. Like it's like clockwork. So here, I think in the States, there's definitely a lot of organization for um, making like things easy for people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like quality of volleyball, I think PVF has the potential to bring in a lot of high level players. And it was exciting to see a few of them this year in the season to like, I know like we're not just like USA based, like this is a global thing that we want to bring and like make the best out of. So it was cool to see.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious. So after this first season, what, if you can share with us, like what was the process of signing a PVF contract between the first and the second season? And how did the Grand Rapids opportunity come up?
Yeah. Great question, actually. was very specific in what I wanted to like search for next year because obviously like I got injured. I wanted I don't feel like I had a chance to really show what I'm capable of. And I was setting with Nutsara Tomcom, who's just like a star, you know. So that brought a lot of good competition between the two of us to make our team as successful as it was in the end. And at the end of the season, I had like a list of three things that I was like looking for. And it I asked for it like with my agent and then she went and found it. And it was probably like the biggest manifestation thing. Like I spoke that into existence like as soon as that last point fell on Mojo. So I was like, okay, wow, this is pretty powerful.
Wow. We went and we went to a game in Grand Rapids and
And we got this merch.
Grand
You ready
Rapids
to
merch.
You ready? You
my
ready
God.
for December?
So
Nikki.
You didn't know I was
So
going to do
sorry,
that,
I was-
Kelly.
I hope
Yeah, so we're that's our closest. Well, now it'll be Indy Ignite will be our closest
Yeah.
to Chicago, but we went to Grand Rapids to see a game and we got free merch. It was really fun.
The announcer was really cool. Really
Oh
nice.
yeah. Shout out to Dan.
And
Oh, yeah.
where they play is really cool. And the I'd never been to Grand Rapids. Great city. Not that I need to sell you on it. You're already going there. So
No, I'm so excited and I really enjoy talking to Kathy. I feel like she and I have a similar mindset when it comes to volleyball. And so she's very competitive, very driven. Obviously, you have to be if you want to be I mean, she made it to the finals last year, so like she's got something going on, you know, that's good. And I just really appreciate her personality on and off the court. Like she has already connected me to a lot of art in Grand Rapids, which is super
Nice.
exciting because like when volleyball ends, that's the way I would want to like go.
Since you mentioned art real quick, how do you go about pursuing that while you're still playing volleyball? Like what role does that have in your life at this point?
So right now it's definitely the balance. So like volleyball goes for 6 months. When I'm not playing volleyball, my whole entire identity is in art. That's why I don't know if you guys saw recently the PVF meme of like Bob Ross painting, but it says like Raskie in the off season. I was like, yeah, that's very accurate. So I try to give everything to my art because I'm a very all in person. And so when I'm playing volleyball, that has my full attention. It's almost hard to like bring out and still work on art as intently as I try to. So right now during the summers, like I'm actually in the middle of writing a comic. I've been painting. I've been writing a lot more too, which is something that I didn't really explore a whole lot in college, but it's something that came super easy when I started painting and drawing. I was like, well, I have words in my head. I should write them down. So,
Oh my God.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So how are you spending your days now? You said you're doing a lot of painting and you're doing a lot of art and you played in the tournament and you're training, I'm sure. Like, is that like mostly how you're spending your days? And how are you like, what's the role of painting in your life day to day? Are you kind of just like seeing what comes out creatively right now? Like what's your day to day like?
Yeah, so I'll wake up. I coach a little bit nowadays, so I'm doing like private lessons. So I'll do that in the morning, and then I try to leave my days free for like I've been rock climbing a lot recently too, but I'll do that like kind of in the evenings because it gets so hot in the gyms that it's almost unbearable. But yeah, so I've been rock climbing, and then when I do have like the time to paint, I feel like now I have set ideas in my head that it's a good and a bad thing because when you have this idea of what you want your art to look like, all of a sudden there's like these pre-existing conditions of like, okay, if it doesn't look like this, then it's wrong, which it's a mental battle that I'm trying to like release control and just like whatever comes authentically is like what's meant to be there. So that's been a process. But yeah, typically like if I don't rock climb, I'll paint, or if I don't have anything to do that day, like I'll spend my days journaling in the morning, reading. I'll write a little bit of the comic, and then I like to close out my nights with painting because it just kind of like grounds me a little bit more. But yeah, try to keep it as colorful as possible. I'll show up to like beach volleyball games and I've got like paint up my arm. I'm like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, man. It got crazy last night.
Yeah, that's something we've all talked about a lot on the podcast before is like just this idea that a lot of these athletes might not have been thinking about continuing to play. and in their lives. Like, this hasn't been a super accessible option for a lot of athletes, and yet there are like hundreds that go abroad to go play. But thinking about like this season is so many months out of the year, and if you commit to playing the next year, like what kind of, job are you getting, or how are you spending your days in between? And so we're seeing a lot of players coach, and people like speculate online or like, well, she's coaching, so she must not be playing. And it's like, you still have to navigate what to do in that time, when whether you're in the city that you're going to play in or not, right? Whether that's like a part of your contract. Like, we've talked a lot about like, you got to be doing something. Players are probably doing something in the in between because they're waiting for that next season to come around. And so I'm always really interested in like what players are doing and how they're navigating that.
Yeah, it's a super interesting space because when you go from overseas where the seasons are like anywhere from 8 to 10 months long, and then you get maybe 2 to 3 months home at summer, like you're not going to be able to work a whole lot in that 3 months. So it's just like a dead sprint until your next contract. And so that's something I dealt with last year, was this burnout of like dead sprinting through my summer. And then all of a sudden September rolls around and I was like, I'm still here. What do I do with myself? Like, I've got so much time. And I personally never thought I would ever coach, just because like I was like, I don't want to, I have no interest in it. But I think for me, being able to work one-on-one with like biomechanics and like technical things is something that I've recently fell in love with. And so when I get one-on-one with kids and I'm just like, oh, knowledge, I'm gonna give it to you.
Okay, that really resonates with me, because I'm also in the I'm never going to coach camp. And then someone recently was like, hey, we need coaches. And I go, I will be a hitting specialist. Like, I don't, but the thought of having a whole team genuinely overwhelms me.
100%. I totally relate to that because like I know how much of a pickle I was from like 14 until college, and you're telling me I have to manage 12 of them. Like,
oh my God.
bro.
And their parents.
And their
parents.
Parents.
You mentioned you always kind of wanted to keep your volleyball career going. Is that right?
Yeah.
How were you thinking about college and post-grad? You really wanted to like figure out how to get to that next level, and it sounds like you found an agent to help you navigate abroad. Is that right?
Yeah. So my senior season, I was, if I can cuss on the platform, I was bent on being.
We encourage it. Just let it fly.
Like I was hell bent on being an Olympian, and that is what I wanted. And every day, like I woke up and I was like, screw you, I'm gonna be an Olympian. Like to literally anybody that walked up to me, I was like, so like that was my mentality. So I knew that Italy A1 was like the place to be if you want to like compete at a high level. And I got an Italian agent. He connected me with that team. And when I was in college, that was my main like focus. A couple years, probably about my second or third year after pro, I started to realize that like there's so much more to life than volleyball, and I wasn't giving anything to my artistic side. And so I kind of like pulled back from that mentality a little bit, because it was honestly crushing, like this idea of like, all right, this is the greatest stage, and if I don't make it, then I'm nothing. So actually Haley Washington and I, she's my best friend. And so we talk about this a lot. We talk about this gladiator mentality that we develop of like, I want to be great, I want to be perfect, or I don't want it at all. And so like, that's so unhealthy. So like, how do you manage
It's really
that?
hard. Yeah.
And I really care about the game. I'm a show off at heart. Like that's just who I am. And I think there's something internally that like when I find good flow in volleyball, that I'm like, yes, this is what it means to be alive, kind of thing, which sounds really dramatic. But now it's more about like, okay, how can I put myself in the best situation possibly, like financially looking forward, while I can still play this game? Like real things start to set in once you get past like 25, 26 area, and you're like, all right, maybe I want a house, maybe I want to be able to travel the world. And in order to do those things, there needs to be like money, abundance. And so like, how do you cultivate abundance in your life to have it like reciprocated? So
Yeah, absolutely.
that makes sense. That kind of went on a tangent. If that
No, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear. I mean, I think that we all go through that, like playing volleyball in college and it being if that's what you've done and it's been your focus, like from when you were a kid through college, you're focusing on improving skills, you're figuring out how to get to that next level. And then for a lot of us, it's like the college senior year is like the cliff, you know, like it's not something where I was thinking, because I'm 5'7", I was thinking like when I entered college, I was like, well, this isn't going to be it. So how am I setting myself up for post grad? And I think that navigating pro volleyball as an American, when prior to last year there wasn't an opportunity to play here, you have to like go all in. Like there's no other choice about it. And I think that now it's cool to see the increased opportunity for people who can maybe like for longer keep that dream alive, you know, and like keep working on skills. And that kind of takes me into like what I'm curious about, what part of your game or like skill were you focused on from college? Like what, like, so like talking setting mechanics, because I'm into that. We like to talk about the specifics of mechanics on this podcast, and I was a setter. So like what part of your game were you focused on in college versus like, you know, maybe over abroad versus now? What are you thinking about?
So I think I had a very good setup at Oregon my senior year with Matt Ulmer as my head coach, because he also is very technically sound while coaching. And so a lot of the focus was being able to find that like invisible thread that ties setters to hitters with tempo and how you like feel their timing, because you're not always going to be able to rely on your eyes to see things. They certainly help when you use them, but when you know, pass is high, but you can feel your hitter approaching, like how do you navigate that space and still make like a good set? So that was something in college that I was very, very fixated on. And especially my senior year, if you go back and watch the game that Oregon plays against Minnesota, that entire game, I was literally just feeling my setter or feeling my hitters the entire time. Like there wasn't anything that was like, okay, yes, we're going to run this play, but the choice is based off of feel, not based off of maybe like what the blockers are showing me. So, I mean, that does play a part. If this is all getting like very, just getting very like touchy feely versus like sound set points, but
no, it makes sense. It
really does.
No, it's like it's in the zone. Like it's another sense. It's a sixth sense, like perception rather than like touch, hear, smell.
No, you're 100% right. It's just like that. Those things that you can't necessarily like name, feel, but like the energy. And so
the vibe, if you will.
The vibe, the flow, you know. So when I went overseas, that was my initial thought, is like, oh, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to like study my hitters, get their timing. But the game is so much more like work to produce. Like we are here to win. It's a business. Like there's no time for all these like flowy, soft, fuzzy feeling things that you want to develop with your team, because you get 1 year with a team and it's the last one standing at the end of it. So like things become a little bit more, I don't want to say cutthroat, but they just become a little bit more like down to earth with like, this person is hitting every single ball. You better set her every single ball, versus being like, oh, I kind of want to get tricky and play with the blockers right now. Like, no, it's just very black and white, I guess. So yeah.
And what are you thinking about right now? Like, what are you focused on
with my game?
Is it similar, like getting to know your teammates right away? Like, what is the first thing you're going to be thinking about going into Grand Rapids?
I'm very interested in establishing something that's going to last. And at Grand Rapids, I hope to do that. So I would love to like, you know, throwing it out into the universe. I would love to stay for a couple of years and to just like really develop something. And to do that, you need to develop relationships with people. You need to develop, like, you need to get to know like their likes, their dislikes, how they like to be talked to, how can you bring out the best in your players? And especially as a setter or anybody who's looking to be a leader on the team, that's my first priority, is like, okay, I'll ask people like what their love language is, because that'll tell me if I can communicate to you, or if we're going to be like how to like talk to people to get them to like do what we want as a team. So that's very big for me, that kind of stuff. So I would say, yes, we're back to more of like that college idea of developing relationships and seeing how that transcends onto the court.
Yeah, totally. You got to know as a setter, you got to know like what everybody's vibes are.
Yeah, no, literally, you gotta be on lock with everybody. So.
And I know it's going back a little bit, but how did you even approach doing that in Italian or French those years you were overseas?
So a lot of the times, believe it or not, it came down to cooking.
Oh.
I
Sure.
would have, we all lived at the same, like my first year in Italy, it would be all of us lived in the same spot. And so people would come over and teach me how to make like their favorite Italian dish. And so like with that basic communication style, I could kind of learn how they like to be leaders or how they like to communicate. And so it would just be kind of like that. And then when I was in France, obviously France has a different foreign rule, so you can have as many on the court as possible as long as one of them is French. So the common language in France is English. That's why I also feel like I was able to be better there. However, I was still having like pasta nights with my roommates. I was still asking people to come over for, I make a mean pad thai, let me tell
Ooh.
you. Like we would just cook together. And that is something that like I recently or during overseas like fell in love with, because I think growing up too, I didn't really like cooking. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is the bridge to community. To let's do
Well,
it.
that honestly, that I mean, that checks out. Like just thinking about college, and that is how you're interacting with your teammates a lot. Like we would have people come over and cook for everyone, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's. I think you solved everything.
Yes.
Wow.
With food, you just solved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Yeah. Food is the way, you know, and
Mhm.
especially too, like this concept of like too many cooks in the kitchen. Like, how do you manage that? Like, I'd
Yeah.
have 5 or 6 people over. Like, who's actually, should I sit? Are you gonna take charge? What's happening here? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Just learned a lot about people doing that.
You were talking about how abroad you only have the 1 year, you can't be as shifty, but like you're a lefty setter. So the first question is, how does it feel to be better and scarier than 87% of setters, because you can attack the ball without a trace, but also like what were you not able to use that as much as a threat, and how do you think about that part of your game?
First of all, that's why I call myself Danger Raskie, you know?
Okay.
Okay,
It's very
literally,
much
we're gonna ask that.
We're gonna ask, what's that about? Where's that from? But that makes
It
sense.
definitely, so when I came back into the States, we'll get to the left-handing thing because it ties into this. But like
Okay,
when I
okay.
came back into the States, I was very much like, I get to reinvent myself and I can do whatever I want. And if I have this vision of who I want to be, it's super easy to be that person. So somebody one day just like asked me, like, what's your middle name? And without missing a beat, I just went, Danger. And all of a sudden it just became like this new thing. And I was like, okay, guess I'm Danger Rasky now. So like the people that I play beach volleyball, like they especially know me as Danger. But it also comes from like, I am an adrenaline junkie. I love doing like high stakes things. For example, like slacklining. I love that. I love rock climbing. I went to Switzerland this summer and did like this huge like 80-foot canyon swing, or like there's a place in California that I've gone bungee jumping. Like I just love that kind of stuff that makes you feel a little bit more alive. And so for me, being left-handed, one, it sets me apart, which for the longest time I thought that was bad until I got like into 13, 14, and I realized I could hit. And all of a sudden I'm like, nah, I can do something cool. Like it's definitely a confidence boost. Um, so it feels like, I don't know, it feels very natural to just be able to hit. And oh, that brings me into my other story. The only reason I'm a setter is because the hitting line at volleyball camp was too long. And I'm a very impatient person. So I was like, fine, I'm gonna go be a setter. And that is how I am a setter.
Wow.
I love learning like setters or origin stories, because like
What's yours,
me,
Nick? Yeah.
mine is
Oh,
that I was
yeah.
too much of a control freak. I was like, you want me to wait? Like a little bit of that impatience, right? Like, you want me to wait for someone else to decide if the ball's coming to me? No, I want it to come to me all the time, and then I decide where it goes. Like, I was just like a power junkie a little bit. But I love hearing about people when they're just like, oh, the line was too long, or like, I wasn't passing, so I wanted to try something else, like just that
Yeah.
kind of experience. But I wanted to be a lefty so bad. Starting in high school and in college, I would just like train, because you're still trained to dump, right? Like you still need to get your left hand like up on strength. And so
Yeah.
I would like train hitting against the wall with my left hand, doing the right footwork. And it was like something I spent so much time on. I was so jealous of all the lefties who would do it, who could do it so easily. Do you feel like that made you feel like weird or different in sport? Like, did you ever feel like that from a really young age? Or what's like your first memory of that?
That's a great question. I remember, I want to say I had to have been like 12 or 11, and I was playing at this volleyball camp, and I've like notorious always just the only lefty. And so when coaches see that, I start hearing the phrase, okay, you're going to have to mirror me. And I'm
Mm.
like, what does that mean? And so from a young age, I just remember hearing mirror me because there were no left-handed coaches. And so that at a young age already was like, well, I'm different. But it like very quickly turned into like, I'm different.
Yeah, you flipped it. That's right. And
Yeah.
that's like that's such an interesting way to think about like turning this like negative into a positive, right? It sounds like you are looking for opportunities to do that
Yeah.
all the time everywhere you go. Like that's a very cool
I think,
feature.
yeah, and I think I think you're absolutely right. And for anybody who's like lefty or for anybody who like has anything that's just a little bit different, I spent so much time because it wasn't like you don't conform that people see that as problematic. And
Mhm.
instead it's just like the world or the system that we are living in now didn't have answers for me when I was a young person. So I'm very happy to be like different, and it just keeps encouraging me. Like it validated a lot of the creativity that I had too as well, because they're like, oh, you use a different side of your brain, like that's why you see things differently. Like everybody's crushing algebra 3, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this is like that. Then no thanks.
Oh.
So it's
Yeah,
validated a
I
lot.
see now thinking about like the creativity side, I want to ask, Kelly and I have had, I wouldn't say an argument, but like a difference of opinions
Oh God.
in this space. Like talk to us. Do you have a serving routine?
Hmm.
Do you have a thing you do each time? How do
Okay,
you think about that?
it's not a difference of opinion. I understand why people do it. I just like I don't know, just like
She's
relax. Sorry, I
she
shouldn't say that before she even
You don't even
says
know what if she's your team yet.
if
She just like
she's like I have
decided
to
that she
bounce
doesn't
it
care.
30 times and then
No, that's so interesting though, because I also run into that a lot with the kids that I coach. And I think I'm very much on your side about it's more of a mental routine than it is a physical routine. So like when I go back there, I'm more focused on like I'm going to tag this person's right shoulder. So like I go back, give myself an objective, and then I execute versus like, all right, bounce the ball 3 times,
yeah.
kiss it, and then throw it around my head, and then spit
Okay,
some sparkle magic.
was there a guy on the men's volleyball Olympic team that was kissing the ball before he was serving? I think there was.
I think there was. It's very common. I don't remember who it was, but like my teammate from Argentina, Yasni, when she topspin serves, she'll kiss it and then fireball ace. Like it's dead. You're done. She kisses the ball, you're out.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Kind
Amazing.
of nice.
Yeah,
A
I
touch
just
of
had
approval, I guess.
yeah, I'd never seen that
Yeah.
before. But you
I
know.
don't. My thing on serving routines is still just like whatever you need to do to like
Yeah.
reset your brain.
For
And
sure.
that for me does often mean a couple bounces, a spin, and an exhale. Like
Yeah.
that's just how it executes for me.
Just
But
like just yeah, off the top of the dome, couple bounces, spin it and exhale.
Right. Take a
Yeah,
lap
yeah.
around the
Yeah,
ring.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also really obsessed with like the level that we're at, August, is that, you know, we're like paying money to play in a gym in like the suburbs. And so I'm really also I'm always very interested in seeing like who has like such an intense routine that they're like taking themselves so seriously. And I think like something we like to see is when people are actually playing at high levels, when they're just like, whatever, casual, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, see, none of it matters, guys. Like, some of you are taking this really seriously, and we don't got to do that. But whatever gets you there, I guess.
Did you see the game USA Women's against Serbia in volleyball? And I want to say it was Boshevik that top spin serves, but she fucking threw this ball like 30 feet into the court. And the announcers are like, I don't even know what to call that. But she hit the ball like this and it went up and over the net. And I was like, that's pro sports, everybody. You do what you gotta do.
She
It
found a
was
way.
a successful serve. Like
Yeah, it got
oh
over.
wow. Yeah, no, I
Obviously,
missed that.
think
I
they
missed
ended
that
up
match,
running
I
like the
think.
middle. Yeah.
Oh my
Like an
God.
underhand. Listen, I was a very good underhand server through through 8th grade. I was getting aces with the
Whatever.
underhand.
Whatever gets it over the net. Okay.
The biggest
All right.
lesson that I learned from overseas was this last year in Benel. I had a middle from Ukraine, and she was the funniest. Like, she was probably like close to 35, 36, like a little bit older. Like, she's done her time. And she was just like, you know what? At the end of day, point is point. Done. And so, like, however so that's my mentality now is point is point. Make it weird. If it works, cool. Point is point.
I like that. Point is
Yeah, me
point.
too.
Yeah.
I assume you've gone to Grand Rapids. gone to visit yet or no?
Just
No?
the one time that we've played them
Oh,
there.
wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. And they were there, remember, for that long weekend.
Oh,
Mhm.
we played
Doubleheader, wasn't it?
twice.
Wasn't it?
That
At
was
least you can go back
crazy.
and forth.
Oh, we can
But
talk about the PVF schedule. Well, we were talking to Kathy George.
we have so many opinions.
So when we were at when we went to go see the match, we like had this casual conversation with Kathy George in the hallway, and she was like, not complaint. I mean, she's like, this schedule.
It was tough. It was certainly
Yeah.
tough for a lot of us. And
Hopefully
as
it's better this year. Like now that they've had a whole year to maybe make the schedule.
yeah, that was definitely a big topic of conversation this last year because especially for Mojo specifically, like we had almost months
Yeah.
off at a time
Oh
of
my
games.
gosh.
And in that last 2 weeks, we were playing every 2 or 3 days. And like physically, that's hard. Like that, like, and we didn't have recovery on the road. Like it was a lot to go through.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
Yeah, we did full ideations on what it was like to fly from Orlando
Yeah.
to San Diego.
Yeah.
We did like full.
Honestly, one of the best moments in any episode that we recorded. Like,
was us improving what happens
yeah.
when you have to go
Because then you're
3
like
time zones.
you're a 6'2" middle and you have to get on the Southwest flight and you're like, oh, I guess I'll get the aisle seat, but it's still not big enough. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I have to
and
rehash
Tanya
the same bit that we've done.
super, super tall. So like I think there's one flight that she like didn't get the exit row on, and I was like, God bless you. Like that's gotta be tough.
Very
Can't
tough.
relate.
Well, we're looking forward to catching some games over
Totally.
over in the Eastern time zone of Grand Rapids pretty soon.
What is the last book or comic or both that you loved and then also like that you hated?
Ooh.
Oh, you don't have to put it on blast. Okay, maybe just loved.
Okay, but I was so ready to put it on blast.
Okay, you can do it. Do it.
This is gonna be a hot take. I really, really enjoyed Fourth Wing. The second book, Iron Flame, was not my favorite.
No spoilers though.
Yeah, no spoilers. Just from like an artistic standpoint, no spoilers. I felt like it wasn't like, and this is such a hot take, so people are probably gonna
No. The thing, I've heard it so many times.
I just felt like the writing in it was like very not mature. I felt like the things that were issues of conflict were like, I don't see this as being as big of a problem as it's
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, Nikki. Yeah.
No, go ahead. You just know like big spoil, but like, so I'm queen of not reading things that are incredibly popular for years and years, and then saying, no, I'm gonna read it though, so no spoilers, and I do it with a shit-eating grin on my face. Like I know that I'm asking something
this
ridiculous.
is like reasonable to like no spoilers on these books because they like they're
they're very
not
popular
even
and you lent me the one. It's right there. I haven't done anything about it yet.
You have both of them.
I have
of
both of them.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I gotta get on.
Yeah. I've read all of what Sarah J. Maas, all of hers. I am a big fan of Leigh Bardugo, which is like the Shadow and Bone series. That's the first. I actually have one of my tattoos is from her Six of Crows books.
Oh, cool.
Nice. I love her and all of her other writing that she's done with like Ninth House. I'm obsessed with. And then she just had one come out called The Familiar that I'm reading right now. But I think the most recent book that I read that I like fell in love with was Lightlark by Alex which was such a it was so random because I was I was in the middle of reading something else and somebody like threw it down and I was like, what's this? And then like cue to me at like 3 a.m. finishing the book and I was like,
have you read
Game Changer?
Have you read the second one?
Yes, and I'm so
excited
for the third one to come out. Are you Team Oro or Team Grimm? Come on.
I mean, obviously Grimm, but those books, like I think I was like reading them at the same time one of my friends was, and it was just like it was a great experience. But that's like the character really annoys me. But overall, the twist was so good.
So good, right? I know I definitely ran into that too, because I feel like there's this stereotype for female heroines or just female characters to like embrace when they're being written about, and I'm like, can we not fall into that trope?
Yeah.
You're really annoying.
Anyway,
you mentioned a tattoo. If we feel okay about
Yeah, we can
putting
we
a
can move
point
on.
on the
We can
literary
move on from
critique
books.
piece of the conversation. I'll never
Yeah.
forget it. You mentioned tattoo, and it was on my list because I've seen on like the PVF memes observations, and like other people in the YouTube chat are like they're looking at your tattoos.
Mhm.
They're seeing things, they're seeing references, they're very excited about them. I would love to know maybe a most recent tattoo, or like your favorite, or your first, or what your next one is. Like what have you got for us?
Yes. Okay. So step into my office. The one that I get recognized for a lot is my Kageyama tattoo, which is, of course, from the haiku anime, which is volleyball. And I think like
Oh
that
yeah.
brought a lot of attention to volleyball in pop culture media as well as anime in pop culture media. So that was super exciting. And I think it's kind of like it's a very big like if you know kind of vibe. And so after a lot of games, people are like, "Is that Kageyama?" And I'm like, "Of course it is." Like he's just super super cool. So I would say a lot of my tattoos are inspired from the things that I grew up on, which was like Avatar: The Last Airbender, or I grew up watching anime. I grew up watching Studio Ghibli. Is Hayao Miyazaki is like my hero. The way he tells stories, so beautiful. Like I just want to encapsulate all he does in like my artwork too. So that brings me to my one of my favorite ones is from Princess Mononoke, and it says "See with eyes unclouded," which is a big theme in one of his movies, Princess Mononoke. And I just love it so much. And I guess, sorry to answer your one of your other questions. My first
So
tattoo
many.
is the one on the back of my neck, and it's stag antlers, and it's from Harry Potter. So
Oh.
yeah.
Classic.
Kelly's rereading right now.
I'm not rereading, I'm reading for the first time.
What?
Ooh,
I had never read Harry Potter.
Any
Whoa.
of them?
girl.
I read the first 3 like
You
years
just
Yep.
you just
ago.
stopped then? You're just like, oh,
And
that's
that
about
That's what
was
right
happened to
enough.
me.
Well, I gotta be honest, you guys. Number 4 is not doing it for me.
Whoa. Whoa. Hot take.
That's when I stopped.
Goblet of Fire.
I need it to pick up. I need a
It's
little.
gonna.
I know they're at the Yule Ball right now.
It's
You know what? And I've said it's a problem because I've seen the movies. That's
that
the
makes
problem.
sense.
And I know that.
I will
Um,
say though, if it gives you any like hope, 5, 6, and 7 give a little bit more than what the movies don't. So you get to like find out some more like back history, which I think is super
Yeah.
interesting, especially
I'm
when it comes to like the
yeah,
order.
very
So
excited about that. But
yeah.
a
anyway.
callback is that I did manage to stay away from Harry Potter spoilers for about a decade. And then I read
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 for the first time in 2020. And I agree with August. They're way better than the movies.
How
But I
did
stayed
you
away
stay
from the
away
movies
from Harry
too.
Potter's
Well, again,
spoilers for
it was
that
She's
a
psychotic.
joke. I'm crazy. I'm crazy.
Nuts.
I would just like remove myself from anything.
Remember the thing she said about being a control freak?
Yeah,
Hmm,
I already know this about myself.
I see.
But anytime it was on TV, I would make my siblings turn it off.
Mm.
And they'd be like, "This is so ridiculous." And I would say, "No spoilers."
You're not having a Hallmark Harry Potter weekend like the rest of us.
Well, now I can, but no, I didn't used to do that shit.
That's impressive. I will give you credit for that because like I'm very much like sometimes, oh, this is really bad. Like I'll find out spoilers for things and then I just won't finish it because I'm like, well, I don't like how it ends. So simply I'm not going to participate in this.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
valid. I get
I
it.
get it. Okay,
Wow.
I want to talk about I want you to tell us about the "Oh to be human" mantra. We
Yes.
see it in the social media. I want to hear more about it.
So I can't remember when it started, if it was overseas or if it was last summer, but I it's funny leading into this. I also think I have I don't want to say like a control issue, but I'm very much like, okay, it gives me a sense of understanding if I'm in control, like, okay, I can navigate this, I'm in charge, I'm prepared for it. So in terms of just living life, there was this huge surrender that came last summer to that control of like some of my best moments being alive because it's so finite. Life is so finite. It like, and until you can really like meet yourself at that level, it's not going to mean the same. But like, I feel like I've met myself at that level of really understanding that like everything does come to an end at some point or another. And so if you can stand on like the stoic side of that fence and be like, nothing matters, instead of like, oh, nothing matters. That's how I try to remind myself in these moments that I am so human, that I can relinquish this control, and that like it's good to just laugh at yourself. Like there's such a peace that comes from that versus being like, oh, I got to be cool, I got to be danger at all times. Like, and I'm still learning about this every year, because there are moments where I'm like, man, this is not how I want to be perceived. But then at the same time, I have no effing control over how people perceive me. And as much as I want to be cool and dangerous, like to myself, if I can set that like idea, perfect, I'll walk that way, and whatever people want to perceive of me is their business. Like it's none of my business how they do that. And so to remind myself that it's out of my control, I started saying like, oh, to be human. Like, and I say it around my friends too, to like encourage them that like we're only going to be here for a set amount of time. So like you might as well like lean into enjoying it versus being so held back. And like I'm also still grappling with the same things you are, of like being held back by like perfectionism or like insecurities. But like the sooner we can like shed that skin and step into a new shell that is so much more freeing, like life looks different. Life comes from you. Like you're not just waiting for, like, you're not reactive to everything around you. You get to enjoy it. You get to be present. And so like that's the ultimate for me of being present, is in those moments where I feel so human and I want to like remember it. So, oh, to be human.
I love that
Wow.
so much.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks.
In those moments, like what does being human mean to you? Like when you feel those moments.
Okay. So, for example, this summer when I was in Switzerland, I wanted to take this super cute video of me like walking across this tree and pulling like a little mermaid sitting on a rock. And I was like, that's going to get all the followers. I'm an influencer, I'm a travel influencer. Okay. So I set up my camera. And as I'm walking across this like tree, it's so smooth over from the water that it is literally sitting in. I take one step and I can already feel it start to slip. I take a second step and I eat shit, just completely like straddle this tree. Like my tailbone hurts. Like
Oh.
my foot goes in the water. Like I'm half under. But it was just such a like, in that moment, I could be like super upset or super mad or super whatever. But that is so human, of like that imperfectionism, that like, or imperfection. And like, it's so clumsy, but it's so natural. Like it just comes easy to be a silly goose. I guess, I guess that's what it means for me to be human, is to laugh at yourself, to get other people to like realize that the masks that we wear, because everybody does, whether you want, like, whether you acknowledge it or not. We have, like, for example, like the mask that I'm wearing for you guys right now is one of like, I don't know, put together professionalism, but it's kind of starting to slip a little bit. But like all these masks that we wear, it's okay at some point. Like the people that truly love us, the people that accept us, our tribe, those masks start to slip down and authenticity reigns through. So like to be human is to be authentic and to feel empowered versus held back in these moments of I could be like mad at myself for not being perfect, or I could just kind of laugh at and like enjoy. So
Yeah.
hope that like made some sense.
I love it
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
It's like such a big
Wow.
reason why we wanted to talk to you too. Like I feel like those things that are your values permeate through in all of the different ways that we can, like perceive you. Frankly, like the first time I heard of you, saw you, was that video of you being mic'd up in a Mojo practice and like swearing, and you're talking to people and you're communicating with your team, and it's the all right counter. Like I was like, yeah, this girl's fucking fun. Like I was just like, I would want to play with her. I would want to meet her. I would want to talk to her, hang out with her. Like you can just sense that like not taking yourself too seriously is like the way that we counterbalance the expectation of the world to like be serious and be a certain way,
Yeah. And I spent so much time when I was little being super serious, which a lot of that comes from like my circumstances growing up where I had to be an adult. But like now that I'm comfortable, I'm like creating my own story right now. It's kind of fun to look back and be like, damn, that was pretty embarrassing, but man, that was funny. Like stuff like that, just to be able to laugh and enjoy like everything that I've put into, and people should be able to do this too. Like there should be a point in your life where you get to enjoy the hard work that you've put in. Like you're not just hustling every day to get to this, because then I'll be happy, then I'll be set, you know, like enjoy it now because it is so finite. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, amazing.
I feel like that
It
was
was
like
such
the
a beautiful
perfect
moment.
like ending question moment
Yeah.
thing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to Court Captains, a volleyball podcast. Thank you so much to August Raskie for being here. We're signing off.
Don't forget to be the captain of your own court.
Yay.
Yay.
So
Thanks.
wise. So wise.
It just comes to me. I don't know, man.
Oh, amazing.
We got beautiful.